Waterfall pulled the bear. Downstream, a courageous baby's shout prompted a heart-stopping rescue. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Every bit of your support helps us create even more amazing stories for you. The morning mist hung low over Pine Valley Creek, painting the forest in shades of silver and blue. Sunlight broke through the canopy in scattered beams, dancing on the surface of the rushing water. The peaceful sounds of nature filled the air. Birds calling to one another, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, and the constant murmur of the stream as it wound its way through the wilderness. Olivia Reed adjusted the woven carrier strapped to her chest, where her 10-month-old daughter, Willow, babbled happily. The baby's eyes were wide with wonder, taking in the vibrant colors of wildflowers dotting the riverbank. Olivia had come to gather berries, a morning ritual she had maintained since moving to the cabin on the edge of the forest 3 months ago. "Look at those pretty blue ones, Sweet Pea," Olivia whispered, pointing to a cluster of berries. Willow reached out with her tiny fingers, grasping at the air. Her giggles echoed across the water, carrying farther than seemed possible for such a small being. Olivia placed her gathering basket on a flat rock and moved closer to the berry bush, careful to keep a safe distance from the water's edge. The current was especially strong after the heavy rains earlier in the week. The normally gentle creek had transformed into a rushing torrent that tumbled forcefully downstream toward the 30-foot waterfall half a mile away. As Olivia picked berries, dropping them into her basket with practiced care, she hummed a lullaby. Willow had grown quiet, her attention caught by something across the stream. Olivia glanced over, following her daughter's gaze. On the opposite bank, partially hidden by ferns and low-hanging branches, a small brown bear cub pawed at the water. Its fur glistened with droplets as it playfully splashed at the current. The cub couldn't have been more than a few months old, with innocent eyes and oversized paws that spoke of future growth not yet realized. Olivia tensed, instinctively scanning the area for the mother bear. The forest remained still. No protective mother appeared among the trees. The cub must have wandered off alone, a dangerous situation for the young animal. "Shh, Willow," Olivia whispered, though her daughter hadn't made a sound. "We need to back away slowly." But Willow remained transfixed, her eyes locked on the cub with an intensity that seemed impossible for an infant. There was something in her daughter's gaze that Olivia had never seen before. A connection, an understanding that transcended her age. The cub continued to play, oblivious to its audience. It moved along the edge of the stream, batting at leaves floating on the surface. With each step, it ventured closer to a section of the bank that had been undercut by the recent flooding. The soil there looked loose, unstable. A knot formed in Olivia's stomach. She took another step back, planning to circle around through the forest to get back to their cabin. The mother bear could return at any moment, and despite the creek separating them, Olivia wanted no part in coming between a bear and her cub. Then it happened. The cub stepped onto the weakened bank. For a heartbeat, nothing changed. Then came a sickening sound, the crack of earth giving way. The cub let out a frightened cry as the ground beneath its paws crumbled. In an instant, the small brown body tumbled into the rushing water. The current caught the cub immediately, spinning it around as it desperately tried to keep its head above water. Its frightened cries were partially drowned by the roar of the stream as it was pulled toward the waiting waterfall. Olivia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The cub was fighting against the current, but its small body was no match for the power of the water. Every second carried it closer to the falls, closer to certain death. Willow had gone completely still in her carrier, Her usual wiggling and babbling ceased entirely as she watched the scene unfold. Olivia stepped further back from the water's edge, her heart racing. There was nothing she could do. The current was too strong, the water too cold and dangerous. Then Willow drew in a deep breath, her tiny chest expanding. What came next changed everything. The baby let out a scream, not a cry of fear or hunger or discomfort. Sounds Olivia had learned to distinguish over the months. This was something entirely different. It was a piercing, urgent wail that sliced through the forest like a knife. It held purpose, intention. It demanded attention. Olivia startled at the sound, nearly dropping her basket of berries. She had never heard such a noise from her daughter. The scream continued, rising and falling in pitch but never wavering in its intensity. Willow's face had turned red with effort. Her tiny fists clenched as she directed her cry across the water, toward the struggling cub. The forest itself seemed to pause at the sound of Willow's scream. Birds stopped their morning songs, the rustling leaves fell still. Even the rushing water seemed to quiet for a moment, as if nature itself acknowledged something extraordinary was happening. "Willow! What's wrong?" Olivia cried, frantically checking her daughter for injury. But Willow's eyes never left the water. Her tiny arm extended, finger pointing directly at the cub being swept away. That's when Olivia heard the deeper roar downstream, the thunderous sound of the waterfall. Her stomach dropped as she realized what was happening. The cub would be pulled over the edge in minutes, maybe seconds. "Oh no," she whispered. The cub's frantic paddling was growing weaker. Its small head bobbed in and out of the water, fur plastered to its body as it fought against the inevitable pull. A plaintive cry escaped its muzzle, a sound so filled with fear that it pierced Olivia's heart. Willow screamed again, this time with such force that her entire body shook. The sound echoed off the trees and rocks, amplified by the natural acoustics of the valley. Movement on the opposite bank caught Olivia's eye. A flash of brown fur, larger and more powerful than the cub. The mother bear had arrived, drawn perhaps by her cub's cries or by some instinctual knowledge that her offspring was in danger. She charged through the underbrush, her massive body crashing through ferns and saplings as she raced alongside the creek, following her cub's progress downstream. The mother bear let out a bellowing roar that made Olivia's skin prickle with ancient fear. She clutched Willow tighter and backed further away from the water, even though the creek separated them from the bear. But the mother bear paid them no attention. Her focus was entirely on her cub. She thundered along the bank, occasionally plunging into the shallower parts of the stream in attempted rescues, only to be forced back to the bank by the stronger current in the middle. Olivia found herself moving as well, following along her side of the creek, drawn forward by something she couldn't name. Willow had fallen silent, watching with an eerie, focused calm that seemed impossible for a baby her age. "I should get you home," Olivia murmured, but her feet kept carrying her forward, parallel to the mother bear's desperate chase. Ahead, the roar of the waterfall grew louder. Olivia could see the mist rising now, the place where the creek abruptly disappeared over the rocky ledge. The mother bear was growing frantic, her attempts to reach her cub becoming more desperate and dangerous. Through the trees, Olivia spotted something unexpected, a fallen log that stretched across the creek, creating a natural bridge just 50 yards before the waterfall. It was an old pine, its trunk thick and solid, stripped of branches by time and weather. It must have fallen recently, perhaps during the same storms that had swelled the creek. Without conscious thought, Olivia found herself running toward it. The cub was approaching this point quickly, tumbling in the current. The mother bear had seen the log too and was charging toward it, determination in every powerful stride. Olivia reached the log just as the mother bear arrived on the opposite side. For a heart-stopping moment, their eyes met across the rushing water. Olivia saw no aggression in those deep brown eyes, only desperation and fear, a mother's fear for her child. In that silent moment, something passed between them, an understanding that transcended species. They were both mothers. Both would do anything to protect their young. Willow broke the spell with another cry, not a scream this time, but an urgent babble that somehow conveyed more meaning than formed words could have. She pointed downstream where the cub was now just yards away from their position. The mother bear leapt onto the log, her claws digging into the bark for traction. The wood creaked ominously under her weight. She inched forward, belly low, eyes fixed on the approaching form of her cub in the water below. Olivia's mind screamed at her to run, to protect her baby from the wild predator now suspended on a log just 20 feet away. Everything she knew about wilderness safety told her to back away, to make herself scarce, but her feet remained planted. "Come on," she whispered, surprising herself. "You can reach him." The cub tumbled closer, its strength clearly fading. One tiny paw reached up as it passed beneath the log, as if making one final attempt to save itself. The mother bear lunged, stretching her body to its full length, claws extended. For a breathtaking moment she hung suspended, balanced precariously on the log, her massive form reaching down toward the water. But she missed. The cub slipped past, carried by the merciless current, now just yards from the waterfall's edge. Willow let out another piercing cry, this one filled with such distress that Olivia felt it like a physical blow. Without thinking, she stepped onto the log herself. "Olivia, stop!" The voice cut through the roar of the water. Olivia turned to see her husband Marcus emerging from the forest trail behind her, his face pale with fear. "There's a bear on that log," Marcus shouted, breaking into a run. "Get back!" "The cub is drowning," Olivia called back, her voice cracking with emotion. "It's going to go over the falls." Marcus reached the edge of the creek, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. His wife and daughter mere feet away from a full-grown bear, the desperate cub flailing in the water below. The mother bear growled, a low warning sound that vibrated through the air, but she didn't advance toward Olivia. Instead, she backed up slightly on the log, creating distance between them while maintaining her position above the water. "She's not trying to hurt us," Olivia said, her voice steadier now. "She's trying to save her baby." Marcus stood frozen, his forester's training at war with his protective instincts. He'd worked in these woods for years, had encountered bears before, but never in a situation like this. "We have to help," Olivia insisted. Willow babbled in agreement, her tiny body leaning forward in the carrier, straining toward the water. The cub let out another cry as it approached the edge of the falls. The sound galvanized Marcus into action. He stripped off his jacket and tossed it aside. "Stay on the bank," he ordered, his voice tight with fear and determination. "I'll try to reach it." He splashed into the shallows, angling downstream, trying to intercept the cub before it reached the point of no return. The mother bear watched him, her eyes tracking his every move, but she made no aggressive gestures. "Be careful," Olivia called, her heart in her throat as she watched her husband wade deeper. Marcus moved with purpose, his strong legs bracing against the current. He had nearly reached the middle of the stream when his foot slipped on a mossy rock. He stumbled, catching himself before he fell completely, but the moment cost him precious seconds. The cub was almost past him now, just a few feet beyond his reach. Marcus lunged forward, stretching his arms as far as they would go. His fingertips brushed the cub's fur but couldn't get a grip. "No!" Olivia cried as the cub tumbled past. now just yards from the waterfall's edge. Then something unexpected happened. From the forest on the opposite bank, a second bear emerged, larger than the mother, with a distinctive white patch on its chest. The male bear, likely the cub's father, crashed through the underbrush and charged straight for the water. Without hesitation, the massive bear plunged into the creek downstream of Marcus, positioning himself in the last possible spot before the falls. The water foamed around him as he planted himself like a living dam, his enormous body creating an obstacle in the current. The cub slammed into the male bear's side and instinctively latched on with its claws. The father bear swung his head around, gently gripped the cub by the scruff of its neck, and began to fight his way back toward the shore, carrying his offspring to safety. Marcus backed away, giving the bears space but ready to intervene if needed. The mother bear watched from the log, her posture relaxing slightly as she saw her mate rescue their cub. The male bear reached the shallows, still carrying the cub. Once on solid ground, he set the little one down gently. The cub collapsed on the bank, coughing up water, its tiny body trembling with exhaustion. The mother bear immediately abandoned her position on the log and rushed to her family, inspecting her cub with nose and paws, making soft grunting sounds that could only be interpreted as concern. Olivia felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the bear family reunion. Marcus waded back to her side, soaking wet but unharmed. He wrapped his arms around her and Willow, holding them tight. "That was the most amazing thing I've ever seen," he whispered. Willow babbled happily, reaching out toward the bears as if saying goodbye. The mother bear looked up at the sound, her intelligent eyes meeting Willow's. For a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a connection that defied explanation. Then the male bear nudged his mate, and the family disappeared into the forest, the parents flanking their cub protectively as they melted into the shadows of the trees. Marcus shook his head in wonder. "How did you even know what was happening?" "I was up at the cabin when I heard Willow screaming. I've never heard anything like it." Olivia looked down at her daughter, who was now calmly playing with the drawstring on her mother's jacket, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "It was Willow," she said softly. "She saw the cub fall in. She's the one who alerted me with that scream." She kept pointing at the cub in the water. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's impossible. She's just a baby herself." Olivia touched Willow's soft cheek. "I know what I saw, Marcus." She understood exactly what was happening. It's like she knew that cub needed help before anyone else did. As they made their way back to the cabin, taking a trail that ran higher above the creek to avoid any more unexpected encounters, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about what had transpired. The image of the bear family reunited, the father's brave rescue, and most of all, her daughter's inexplicable awareness and response to a crisis that would have ended in tragedy without her intervention. That night, after Willow was asleep in her crib, Olivia sat on the porch with Marcus, watching the stars emerge above the tree line. "Do you think animals can sense things about each other?" she asked. "Even across species?" Marcus sipped his tea thoughtfully. "Today made me question a lot of things I thought I knew. That mother bear could have attacked at any moment, but it was like she understood we were trying to help. And the father appearing right when he was needed most," Olivia added. "It was almost as if—" "As if what?" "As if Willow called him too," she finished, knowing how absurd it sounded. Marcus was silent for a long moment. "There's a legend among the indigenous people who lived in these mountains," he said finally, "about children who can speak with animals. They called them forest listeners, special souls who understand the language of all living things." Olivia leaned against his shoulder. "You don't really believe that?" "I've worked in these forests for 15 years," Marcus replied. "I've seen things that science can't easily explain. Connection between species that goes beyond instinct or training." He looked through the window at their sleeping daughter. "Whether it's a legend or not, something extraordinary happened today, and it started with Willow." As if on cue, a distant sound floated through the night air, the soft huffing call of a bear, answered by the higher pitch of a cub. The bear family was still out there, somewhere in the darkness of the forest. Safe. Together. Olivia closed her eyes and whispered a silent thank you to whatever forces had brought them all to that creek at that precise moment, to the brave father bear, and most of all to her remarkable daughter, who had somehow known exactly what to do. 3 weeks later, Olivia carried Willow along the same forest path, approaching the creek with caution. She hadn't returned to this spot since that dramatic day, but something pulled her back. A need to understand, perhaps, or simply to acknowledge the miracle they had witnessed. The creek had calmed since the rains, returning to its usual gentle flow. The spot where the cub had fallen in was visible from where she stood. The undercut bank now collapsed completely into the water, creating a small delta of soil and stones. "See that, Willow? That's where it happened," she said softly. Willow cooed in response, her eyes scanning the opposite bank with unusual focus for a child her age. Olivia settled on a sun-warmed rock, positioning Willow on her lap so they both faced the water. The peaceful scene bore little resemblance to the life-or-death drama that had unfolded here. The roar of the waterfall was a distant murmur, the forest around them alive with the sounds of birds and small animals going about their day. A flash of movement across the creek caught Olivia's attention. She tensed automatically, scanning the tree line. There, partially hidden by a stand of young pines, stood the mother bear. She was alone this time, her massive body still except for her twitching nose as she tested the air. Her eyes were fixed directly on Olivia and Willow. Olivia's heart raced, but she remained still. The creek separated them, providing a measure of safety, but she knew bears were excellent swimmers if motivated. She held Willow closer, ready to retreat if necessary, but the bear made no move to approach. Instead, she lowered her head slightly in what almost appeared to be a nod of acknowledgement. Then she turned her massive body and ambled back into the trees, disappearing as quickly as she had appeared. "She remembered us," Olivia whispered to Willow. "She came to say thank you." Willow babbled excitedly, waving her arms as if in response to something Olivia couldn't see or hear. Following her daughter's gaze, Olivia spotted a small brown shape at the edge of the forest where the mother bear had vanished. The cub stood there, healthier and slightly larger than when they'd last seen it. It sat back on its haunches and lifted a paw, almost like a wave, before scampering after its mother. Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she hugged Willow close. "You have a special gift, little one," she murmured into her daughter's soft hair. "Something most of us lose as we grow older, the ability to truly see and connect with the world around us." A cool breeze swept through the valley, carrying the scents of pine and wildflowers. As they sat together by the creek, Olivia wondered what other wonders her daughter might reveal as she grew. 2 years passed. Willow grew from a babbling baby into a curious, bright-eyed toddler who explored the forest around their cabin with fearless enthusiasm. Her connection to the natural world only deepened with time. Birds would land near her as she played in the yard. Deer would approach closer than they ever did with adults. Even the normally shy foxes would pause to watch her before slipping away into the underbrush. Marcus and Olivia had grown accustomed to their daughter's unusual bond with wildlife, though they were careful not to mention it to visitors. Some things were too precious, too extraordinary to be examined under the harsh light of skepticism. On the morning of Willow's 3rd birthday, Olivia was preparing a special breakfast when Marcus called from the porch. "Olivia, you need to see this." Something in his voice made her hurry outside, wiping flour from her hands. Marcus stood at the railing, pointing toward the tree line 50 yards from their cabin. There, in the dappled morning light, stood 3 bears. The mother, her distinctive scarred ear immediately recognizable. The father, larger and darker, with his white chest patch. And between them, no longer a cub, but not yet fully grown, their offspring, the one Willow had helped save. "They've never come this close to the cabin before," Marcus whispered. "Not together like this." Willow pushed past them, her little feet pattering on the wooden porch. "Bear friends," she exclaimed, her voice ringing with delight. The bears didn't startle at the sound. They remained at the edge of the forest, watching the cabin with what could only be described as purposeful attention. "It's like they knew," Olivia said, her voice catching. "Like they knew today was special." The young bear stepped slightly ahead of its parents. In its mouth, it carried something, a small branch with bright red berries still attached. With deliberate movements, the young bear placed the branch on the ground at the edge of the clearing. Then it backed up to rejoin its parents. "Is that—" Marcus couldn't finish the question. "A gift," Olivia completed, tears filling her eyes. They brought her a birthday gift. Willow clapped her hands in delight. "Thank you, bear friends," she called. As if in response, the 3 bears turned in unison and melted back into the forest, their dark forms disappearing among the trees. Later, when Marcus retrieved the branch, they discovered it was from a rare mountain berry bush that only grew in the highest elevations, berries prized for their sweetness and medicinal properties. The type of berries Olivia had been gathering the day of the rescue. They added the berries to Willow's birthday pancakes. As she ate, Willow told them a story, delivered in the simple language of a 3-year-old, about the bear family and their adventures in the mountain forests. Details she couldn't possibly know about caves and streams and meadows far from their cabin. Marcus and Olivia exchanged glances over their daughter's head, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Their daughter's gift was real, undeniable, magical in the oldest sense of the word. Not fantasy, but a deeper connection to the natural world that most humans had forgotten was possible. Years continued to pass. Willow grew into a quiet, thoughtful child who spent hours in the forest, often returning with stories of animals she'd encountered and conversations she'd had with them. Her parents never questioned these tales, even when they seemed impossible. They had seen enough to believe. The bear family continued to make occasional appearances at the edge of their property, always keeping a respectful distance, but making their presence known. Sometimes they left gifts, unusual pine cones, interestingly shaped sticks, once even a perfect circle of unusual white mushrooms that Marcus identified as an extremely rare species. On Willow's 7th birthday, Olivia found her daughter sitting cross-legged in the clearing behind their cabin, her eyes closed, face tilted toward the morning sun. Across from her, mirroring her posture with uncanny similarity, sat the young bear, now fully grown but still smaller than its parents. Olivia froze, her instinct to protect her child warring with what she had learned over the years about Willow's special connection. Willow opened her eyes and smiled at her mother. "It's okay, Mom. We're just talking." What is it saying?" Olivia asked, finding her voice. Willow's face took on a thoughtful expression. "She says thank you for the day by the water. She says I called to her father when no one else could." The little girl paused. "She says we're connected now. Forever." Olivia felt goosebumps rise on her arms. She? Willow nodded. She's a girl bear. Her name isn't something I can say with words. It's more like a feeling, like sunrise on water. The bear rose to its feet, her feet, and dipped her head toward Olivia before turning to lumber back into the forest. At the tree line, she paused and looked back, as if committing the scene to memory. Then she was gone, a shadow among shadows. That evening, as she tucked Willow into bed, Olivia finally asked the question that had lingered in her mind for years. That day by the waterfall, when you were just a baby, did you really understand what was happening? Did you know the cub was in danger? Willow nodded sleepily. I've always heard them, Mom, all of them. Their words aren't like our words, but I understand anyway. She yawned and snuggled deeper under her quilt. The bears say I'm special. They call me the human cub who listens. Olivia stroked her daughter's hair, marveling at the extraordinary child fate had given her. You are special, my love, more than you know. As she turned to leave, Willow's sleepy voice stopped her at the door. Mom? The bears say there are others like me, not many, but some. Children who can hear what most grown-ups have forgotten how to hear. Her eyes were already closing as she murmured, They say we're here to remind people how to listen again. Olivia stood in the doorway, her heart full of wonder and gratitude. Outside, through the open window, came the distant, gentle huffing of bears communicating in the darkness. A family connected to hers by an extraordinary moment of courage, compassion, and a baby's determined cry that had changed everything. She thought about the legend Marcus had mentioned years ago. The forest listeners, children with the gift of understanding the language of all living things. Not just a legend after all, but a reality living and breathing in the small form of her daughter. The scream that had started it all, a baby's desperate attempt to save another mother's child, had been just the beginning. What had followed was a story more beautiful than Olivia could have imagined. A reminder that the boundaries between species were perhaps more permeable than humans believed, especially for those who still remembered how to listen. As she closed Willow's door, Olivia made a silent promise to the bears, to the forest, and to whatever forces had blessed her family with this extraordinary gift. They would protect Willow's connection to the natural world, nurture it, and learn from it. For in that connection lay wisdom the modern world had all but forgotten, the understanding that all living things share this earth as family, capable of compassion and gratitude that transcends language, species, and time. And it had all begun with a courageous baby's shout and a heart-stopping rescue beside a waterfall. 5 years later, Willow's 12th birthday arrived with the first snowfall of winter. The forest around their cabin was transformed overnight into a wonderland of white, branches heavy with snow, the creek partially frozen into fantastic ice sculptures. Olivia watched her daughter standing at the edge of the trees, her red winter coat bright against the snow, her breath forming clouds in the crisp morning air. At 12, Willow had grown tall and slender, with her father's dark hair and Olivia's thoughtful eyes. She spent less time talking about her animal connections these days, becoming more reserved as she approached her teenage years, but Olivia knew the gift remained. She saw it in the way birds still followed Willow through the garden, the way deer would pause mid-flight when they spotted her in the woods. "What are you looking for?" Olivia asked, joining her daughter at the tree line. Willow didn't answer immediately. Her eyes scanned the silent forest, searching. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders dropping. "They're not coming." Olivia didn't need to ask who they were. The bear family had been absent for nearly 6 months now, the longest time without a sighting since that first dramatic encounter. Maybe they've moved to a different territory, she suggested gently. Bears do that sometimes, especially when food becomes scarce. No. Willow's voice was quiet but certain. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Before Olivia could respond, Marcus appeared from around the side of the cabin. "Birthday breakfast is ready," he called, complete with berry pancakes and hot chocolate. Willow gave one last look at the forest before turning toward the house. "Coming, Dad." As they ate breakfast, Willow was uncharacteristically quiet, picking at her food despite its being her favorite. Olivia and Marcus exchanged concerned glances over her head. "I have a surprise for you later," Marcus said, trying to lift her spirits. After breakfast, Willow nodded, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. After breakfast, Marcus led them to his workshop behind the cabin. Inside, covered with a cloth, stood something tall and rectangular. "I've been working on this for months," he said, his voice warm with anticipation. "Happy birthday, Willow." He pulled away the cloth to reveal a beautiful wooden bookcase, the surfaces polished to a warm glow. But what made it truly special were the intricate carvings covering its sides and top. Bears, deer, foxes, birds, all the creatures of the forest rendered in loving detail by Marcus's skilled hands. "Oh, Dad," Willow breathed, running her fingers over the carvings. "It's beautiful." "Look at the top," Marcus urged. Carved into the crown of the bookcase was a scene Olivia recognized immediately. A small bear cub in rushing water, a human baby pointing from the shore, 2 adults reaching out to help, and the larger bears coming to the rescue. The story that had changed their lives, preserved in wood. Tears filled Willow's eyes as she traced the scene with her fingertips. "Thank you," she whispered. The moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the front door of the cabin. Visitors were rare, especially in winter when the mountain roads became treacherous. They found a park ranger on their doorstep, his official vehicle parked in the drive. Ranger Tom Hayes had been a friend for years, often stopping by to check on the family during the harsh mountain winters. "Morning, folks," he said, stamping snow from his boots. "Sorry to interrupt, but I figured you'd want to know about this right away." "Know about what?" Marcus asked, inviting him in. Tom's face was grim. "Poachers. We found evidence they've been active in the North Ridge area. Traps, some blood trails. They're after bears, specifically." Willow gasped, her face draining of color. "No!" The adults turned to her, startled by the intensity of her reaction. "We've been tracking 3 individuals we think are responsible," Tom continued, his eyes lingering on Willow with concern. "But so far, we haven't been able to catch them in the act." "Have any bears been hurt?" Olivia asked carefully, watching her daughter. Tom nodded reluctantly. "Found one carcass about 5 miles north. Adult male, killed for its gallbladder. These folks are selling to the black market for traditional medicines." He shook his head in disgust. "Worth thousands to the right buyers." Willow made a small wounded sound and fled from the room. They heard her bedroom door slam a moment later. "I'm sorry," Tom said, genuinely contrite. "I didn't realize it would upset her so much." Marcus sighed. "She has a special connection to the wildlife around here, especially the bears." Tom nodded thoughtfully. "The forest listeners. My grandmother used to tell stories about children like that." At Marcus and Olivia's surprised looks, he explained, "I'm 1/4 Shoshone. The stories have been in my family for generations." After Tom left, promising to keep them updated on the poacher situation, Olivia went to check on Willow. She found her daughter's room empty, the window open despite the cold, fresh footprints in the snow leading toward the forest. "Marcus," she called, panic rising in her throat. "Willow's gone into the forest." They followed her tracks through the snow, calling her name. The trail led deeper into the woods, toward the creek where everything had begun 12 years ago. The snow was falling again, already beginning to fill in Willow's footprints. "She couldn't have gone far," Marcus said, his voice tight with worry. Not in this cold, but Olivia knew her daughter's determination. If Willow believed her bear friends were in danger, nothing would stop her from trying to help. The creek came into view, its edges frozen but the center still flowing black and cold between sheets of ice. Willow's footprints led right to the water's edge and then seemed to vanish. "No," Olivia whispered, her heart seizing with fear. "She wouldn't have tried to cross." Marcus was already scanning the opposite bank for signs of disturbance in the snow. "I don't see anything over there. She must have gone along the bank." They followed the creek downstream toward the waterfall, searching desperately for any sign of their daughter. The snow was falling harder now, limiting visibility and covering any tracks that might have existed. "Willow?" Olivia shouted, her voice echoing through the trees. "Willow, answer us." Only silence answered, the muffled quiet of a forest under snow. Then, faintly, they heard it. A cry that might have been human or animal coming from somewhere ahead. They broke into a run, slipping on the snowy ground, branches whipping at their faces as they pushed through the underbrush. They emerged into a small clearing near the top of the waterfall. What they saw there froze them in place. Willow stood in the center of the clearing, facing 3 men dressed in camouflage. Behind her, pressed against a rocky outcropping, was the mother bear, blood matting the fur on her shoulder. Beside the bear, partially hidden by her massive body, was another bear, smaller, with a distinctive white patch on her chest. The daughter bear, now fully grown. "Get away from her!" One of the men was shouting at Willow, a rifle held loosely in his hands. "That animal's wounded and dangerous." "You made her dangerous," Willow replied, her young voice steady and cold as the winter air. "You hurt her. You killed her mate." The man with the rifle glanced nervously at his companions. "Kid, I don't know what you're talking about. We're hunters, that's all. Now, step aside before that bear decides you look like lunch." "She would never hurt me," Willow said with absolute certainty, "and I'm not going to let you hurt her." One of the other men, taller and leaner than the first, stepped forward. "Listen here, girl. That bear's gallbladder is worth $10,000 on the right market. We're not leaving without it." His hand moved toward a large knife on his belt. Marcus stepped into the clearing, Olivia right behind him. "And we're not leaving without our daughter," he said, his voice carrying the unmistakable edge of a parent protecting their child. "The ranger already knows you're here. Tom Hayes is probably on his way right now." The men exchanged uneasy glances. "You're lying," the man with the rifle said, but he sounded uncertain. "We just left him at our cabin," Olivia said, moving slowly toward Willow. "He knows everything. About the traps, the bear you already killed. He has your descriptions." The wounded mother bear growled, a low rumble of pain and warning. Her daughter pressed closer to her side, eyes fixed on the men with unmistakable intelligence. The moment balanced on a knife's edge, humans and bears, predators and protectors, separated by mere yards of snowy ground, the fate of all hanging in the balance. "Liam, maybe we should go," the third man muttered, shifting uneasily. "This isn't worth jail time." The tall man with the knife, Liam, scowled. "Shut up, Parker, nobody's going to jail." He turned his cold gaze back to Willow. "Move aside, kid, last warning." "No," Willow said simply. What happened next occurred so quickly that later Olivia would struggle to recall the exact sequence of events. Liam lunged forward, grabbing for Willow's arm. Marcus shouted and charged toward them. The mother bear roared, rising to her full height despite her wounded shoulder. And Willow, small, slender Willow, threw back her head and let out a sound that was neither human nor animal, but something primal that seemed to come from the forest itself. It rippled through the clearing like a physical force, stopping everyone in their tracks. The sound echoed off the rocks, amplified and transformed, becoming a chorus of wild voices, wolf and cougar, eagle and fox, 1,000 creatures calling as one. For a heartbeat, silence followed. Then the forest erupted. From every direction came animals. Deer stepping delicately through the snow, foxes with their bushy tails held high, a family of raccoons chattering angrily, squirrels and rabbits and birds of every description. They poured into the clearing, surrounding the humans in a circle of wild, watching eyes. The poachers backed together, their faces pale with shock. "What the hell?" the man with the rifle whispered, his weapon hanging forgotten at his side. From the trees behind the wounded mother bear emerged 3 more bears, younger, powerful, with the same distinctive white chest patch as their sister. The late father bear's other offspring, now grown, coming to their mother's defense. Willow stood at the center of it all, her arms outstretched, her face lifted to the falling snow, tears freezing on her cheeks. She looked both impossibly young and ancient beyond measure, a child and something else, something that belonged to the forest in ways no ordinary human could understand. "This has to stop," she said, her voice carrying unnaturally in the hushed clearing. "The killing, the destroying, taking lives for money." She looked directly at Liam, and Olivia saw the man flinch under her daughter's gaze. "These bears are my family too, and this forest protects its own." As if in answer, a wolf howled from the ridge above, the sound echoing across the valley. Another answered, then another, a pack converging. The man, called Parker, dropped his pack and raised his hands. "I'm out. This is insane." He backed away, eyes darting from animal to animal. "I never signed up for whatever this is." "Coward," Liam spat, but his own voice shook. His hand tightened on his knife. The mother bear growled again, moving to stand beside Willow, her massive shoulder almost touching the girl's. The daughter bear flanked Willow's other side, and behind them, the 3 younger bears formed a protective semicircle. "Last chance," Willow said quietly. "Leave this forest. Never come back, or they will find you." She didn't specify who they were, but her meaning was clear enough. A sharp whistle cut through the tension. All heads turned to see Ranger Tom emerging from the trees, his official uniform stark against the snow. He held no weapon, but his presence carried authority. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, though his eyes widened momentarily at the gathering of animals, "I believe you're trespassing on protected land, and I have reason to suspect you're engaged in illegal poaching activities." The man with the rifle sagged in defeat. Liam looked around wildly, as if contemplating escape, but wherever he looked, animal eyes stared back. The forest had closed ranks. "This is over," Marcus said, moving to stand beside his daughter. Olivia joined them, her heart pounding but her fear replaced by awe at what Willow had done. Tom approached the poachers, handcuffs ready. "You have the right to remain silent." As the ranger led the men away, the animals began to disperse, melting back into the forest as silently as they had appeared. Soon only the bears remained, the wounded mother, her daughter, and the 3 younger offspring. Willow knelt beside the mother bear, her hand hovering over the bloodied shoulder. "I can help," she whispered. The bear lowered herself to the snow with a grunt of pain, exposing the wound more fully. It was a bullet graze, painful but not life-threatening. "Marcus, my first aid kit is in my pocket," Olivia said, "the antiseptic spray and bandages." Her husband looked at her in disbelief. "Olivia, you can't seriously expect to treat a wild bear." "She's not wild to Willow," Olivia replied simply, passing the supplies to her daughter. With gentle, practiced movements, as if she had done this 100 times before, Willow cleaned and dressed the bear's wound. The massive creature remained perfectly still, only the occasional rumble in her chest indicating her discomfort. When she finished, Willow pressed her forehead to the bear's, murmuring words too soft for her parents to hear. The bear huffed gently, her breath warm in the cold air, and nuzzled the girl's face with surprising tenderness. Then the mother bear rose, shook herself, and gave one last look at the humans before leading her family back into the forest. At the edge of the clearing, the daughter bear, the one whose life had been saved all those years ago, paused and seemed to bow her head toward Willow, a gesture of connection, of family. Then they were gone, 5 dark shapes disappearing among the snow-laden trees. Willow stood watching until the last bear vanished from sight. When she turned back to her parents, her face was transformed. No longer the ancient, powerful being who had called the forest to her aid, but simply their daughter again, a 12-year-old girl with snowflakes in her hair and wonder in her eyes. "They'll be okay now," she said. "All of them." Olivia wrapped her arms around her daughter, relief and amazement making her knees weak. "What did you do, Willow? How did you call all those animals?" Willow leaned against her mother, suddenly tired. "I didn't call them, not exactly. I just asked for help, and they heard me." She looked up at her parents with a small smile. "They've always heard me, ever since I was a baby by the waterfall." Marcus joined their embrace, his strong arms encircling both of them. "I think," he said thoughtfully, "that this calls for hot chocolate and the rest of those birthday pancakes." As they walked home through the gently falling snow, Willow between them holding their hands, Olivia marveled at the extraordinary life they had been granted. A life where bears brought birthday gifts, where the forest itself rose up to protect its own, and where a child's cry could bridge the ancient divide between human and wild. Spring came to the mountains in a rush of green and growing things. The creek swelled with snowmelt. Wildflowers carpeted the forest floor, and birdsong filled the air from dawn till dusk. On a warm afternoon in May, Willow sat by the water's edge, her sketchbook open on her lap. Her drawings had become remarkable over the winter months. Detailed studies of animals both common and rare, captured with a precision and insight that left her art teacher speechless. Today, she was sketching cubs, 3 small bear cubs playing under the watchful eye of their mother on the opposite bank. The mother bear's shoulder showed only a faint scar now, where the bullet had grazed her months before. Beside her sat the daughter bear with the white chest patch, now unmistakably pregnant herself, her body heavy with the promise of new life. "They've been coming more often," Olivia observed, settling on the grass beside Willow with a basket of freshly picked strawberries. Willow nodded, adding shading to one cub's playful tumble. "They feel safe here now. The whole forest does." She glanced at her mother. "Ranger Tom has been amazing. Did you know he set up hidden cameras all through the North Ridge? No poacher would dare come back." "Tom's a good man," Olivia agreed, "and I think he understands more than he lets on about your connection to this place." Willow was quiet for a moment, her pencil moving in sure, swift strokes across the paper. "I've been thinking," she finally said, "about the future, about what I want to do with my life." Olivia picked a strawberry from the basket, giving her daughter space to gather her thoughts. I want to protect them, Willow continued. Not just the bears, all of them, the forest, the mountains. She turned to Olivia, her eyes clear and determined. I want to be a ranger, like Tom, and then maybe a wildlife biologist. Someone who helps humans understand that we're not separate from nature, we're part of it. Pride swelled in Olivia's chest as she looked at her daughter. No longer the baby who had saved a bear cub with her determined scream, but a young woman with purpose and vision. I think that's perfect, she said softly. You've always been a bridge between worlds. Across the creek, the mother bear raised her head, her nostrils testing the air. For a moment her dark eyes met Willow's. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement, understanding, connection. The daughter bear with the white patch rose and waded into the creek, moving with care despite her pregnant bulk. She crossed to their side and approached, stopping just a few yards away. From her mouth, she gently placed an object on the ground. A perfect pine cone, unusually large and symmetrical. Willow smiled. Thank you, she said, and congratulations. The bear huffed softly, then turned and made her way back across the water to her family. Olivia looked questioningly at her daughter. Her cubs will be born soon, Willow explained, picking up the pine cone. 3 of them. She wants me to be there. Be there? For the birth? Willow nodded. It's important to her, because of what happened by the waterfall. She believes our families are connected now, by fate, by choice. She ran her fingers over the pine cone's spiral pattern. And she's right. We are. As the bear family moved away into the forest, Willow added a final touch to her drawing. A small human figure sitting on the bank, watching over the cubs with love and protection. A guardian of the forest. A listener to voices most humans had forgotten how to hear. She closed her sketchbook and stood, breathing in the rich sense of spring. I'm going to spend my life helping people remember, she said, more to herself than to Olivia. Remember that we're all connected, that every cry for help deserves to be answered, whether it comes from a human or a bear or the forest itself. Olivia rose and put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. Together they watched the bears disappear among the trees, a family making their way through a world that was a little safer, a little more balanced, because of one extraordinary moment years ago, when a courageous baby's shout had prompted a heart-stopping rescue and changed everything that followed. 6 years passed like the seasons, flowing one into another with the steady rhythm of the mountains. Willow had grown into a striking young woman of 18, tall and graceful, with her father's quiet strength and her mother's perceptive eyes. Her bedroom walls were covered with wildlife sketches and photographs, college acceptance letters, and a framed certificate declaring her the youngest volunteer ranger in the county's history. On a crisp autumn morning, Willow stood in the driveway beside her packed car, the first golden leaves of the season spiraling down around her. College awaited, the state university's prestigious wildlife biology program, where professors had already heard whispers of the remarkable mountain girl with an uncanny connection to animals. You have everything? Olivia asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the ache in her heart. Your winter clothes, your backup phone charger, the emergency kit Dad put together? Mom, Willow laughed, I'm going to college, not the North Pole, and it's only 3 hours away. Marcus joined them, carrying a final box of books. Your mother worries. It's what mothers do. He stowed the box in the trunk and stepped back, his eyes suspiciously bright. The cabin's going to be quiet without you. Willow's smile faded. I'm going to miss this place. Miss you both. She looked toward the forest that had been her classroom and playground for 18 years. Miss them. None of them needed to specify who "them" was. The Bear family had remained a constant presence in their lives, though more distant as Willow entered her teen years. The daughter bear, with the white chest patch, had indeed given birth to 3 cubs that spring 6 years ago, bringing them to the edge of the clearing when they were old enough to travel. Willow had named them Star, River, and Sky in her private thoughts, though she knew bears had their own names for each other. Names that existed in a language of scent and sound and memory that humans could never fully comprehend. The last sighting had been nearly a month ago. The white-patched bear and her cubs, now adolescents, drinking from the creek at dawn. Willow had watched from her bedroom window, sending silent farewells. Somehow, she had known it would be their last visit before her departure. "They understand," Marcus said gently, reading her thoughts as he often could. "They have their own journeys, too." Willow nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I just wish—" A rustling from the forest edge interrupted her. All 3 humans turned, watching as the underbrush parted. The white-patched bear emerged alone, moving with deliberate steps toward the driveway. She had grown massive over the years, her body powerful, her movements confident. The small cub Willow had helped save was now a magnificent adult in her prime. "Stay still," Marcus whispered unnecessarily. None of them feared the bear, but her appearance here, so close to the cabin, was unprecedented. The bear stopped 20 feet away, sitting back on her haunches, her intelligent eyes fixed on Willow with unmistakable purpose. "She's saying goodbye," Willow said softly, tears filling her eyes. "Can she—" "Does she know you're leaving?" Olivia asked, still amazed, even after all these years, by the depth of connection between her daughter and these wild creatures. Willow nodded. "They always know." She took a tentative step forward, then another. The bear remained motionless, watching. When Willow was just 10 feet away, the animal rose and approached the final distance between them. They stood face to face, young woman and bear, separated by species but connected by something deeper than blood. Slowly, with infinite care, Willow reached out her hand. The bear lowered her massive head, allowing Willow's fingers to brush the white patch on her chest. "I'll come back," Willow whispered. "I promise." The bear huffed softly, her breath warm in the cool morning air. Then she turned her head, looking directly at Marcus and Olivia. The intelligence in that gaze sent shivers down Olivia's spine, not of fear, but of wonder. The bear was acknowledging them, including them in this farewell. With a final look at Willow, the bear turned and lumbered back toward the forest. At the tree line, she paused, glancing back once before disappearing into the shadows. Olivia found herself crying, the tears hot on her cheeks. Marcus's arm tightened around her shoulders. Willow returned to them, her face wet but her eyes clear. "I'm ready now," she said, her voice steady. They hugged their daughter one last time before she climbed into her car, started the engine, and began the journey down the mountain road that would take her to her future. Olivia and Marcus stood watching until the car disappeared around the bend, the sound of its engine fading into the quiet of the forest. "She'll be all right," Marcus said, squeezing Olivia's hand. "I know," Olivia replied. "She has always been extraordinary." As they turned back toward the cabin, a chorus of bear vocalizations echoed across the valley, deep huffs and gentle moans, the voices of multiple bears calling together in what could only be described as a farewell tribute. Willow would have understood every nuance of their message. Olivia and Marcus could only sense its profound meaning, a blessing, a promise, a bond unbroken by distance. Winter settled over the mountains, blanketing the forest in snow and silence. Olivia and Marcus adjusted to the quiet of the cabin without Willow's vibrant presence, finding comfort in the regular video calls with their daughter as she thrived in her first semester at university. "Professor Nakamura wants me to co-author a paper with her," Willow announced during one such call in early December, her face flushed with excitement, "about interspecies communication patterns. She says my observational data is the most comprehensive she's ever seen from an undergraduate." "That's wonderful, honey," Olivia said, pride warming her despite the snowstorm raging outside the cabin windows. "Are you going to tell her about your special connection?" Willow hesitated, then shook her head. "Not yet. The scientific community needs evidence they can measure, document. Anecdotes about a girl who can talk to bears won't convince them." She smiled, a flash of determination in her eyes. "But maybe I can build a bridge between their knowledge and what I know to be true. Find a way to help them understand." The conversation shifted to holiday plans. Willow would be home for Christmas in just 2 weeks. They ended the call with promises to prepare her favorite meals and to have the perfect tree waiting. Later that night, as the storm intensified, Olivia woke to a strange sound. She sat up in bed, listening. Marcus slept soundly beside her, unaware of the odd scratching noise coming from their front porch. Pulling on her robe, Olivia made her way through the darkened cabin. The scratching came again, more insistent this time, accompanied by a low whine that raised the hair on her arms. It wasn't threatening exactly, but it held an urgency that she couldn't ignore. Cautiously, she approached the front door and peered through the window beside it. What she saw made her gasp. On the porch, illuminated by the security light, stood a young bear, one of White Patch's offspring, recognizable by the distinctive star-shaped marking on its forehead. Star, as Willow had named him. The bear was clearly distressed, pacing back and forth on the porch, occasionally scratching at the door with his claws. When he saw Olivia's face in the window, he rose on his hind legs and placed his paws against the glass, his eyes meeting hers with frightening intelligence. "Marcus," Olivia called, her voice shaking. "Marcus, wake up." Her husband appeared moments later, hair mussed with sleep. "What's wrong?" "It's one of the bears, Star. Something's happened." Marcus joined her at the window, his body tensing at the sight of the bear now frantically pawing at the glass. "He wants us to follow him," Olivia said with sudden certainty. "Something's wrong with his mother." Marcus looked at her in disbelief. "Olivia, we can't just follow a bear into the forest in the middle of a snowstorm." "We can call Tom," she insisted, already reaching for her phone. "And we need to contact Willow." Within the hour, Ranger Tom had arrived, his four-wheel drive vehicle equipped for the harsh weather. He took one look at the bear, still pacing anxiously on the porch, and nodded grimly. "I've seen this before. Animals seeking human help when one of their own is injured." He checked his tranquilizer gun and medical kit. "But I've never seen it with bears. They usually avoid humans at all costs." "Not these bears," Marcus said. "Not with our family." They bundled into warm clothes and followed as Star led them into the forest. The bear moved with purpose, frequently looking back to ensure they were still following. The snow was deep, the wind cutting, but the animal forged a path that they could navigate even in the difficult conditions. Olivia's phone buzzed in her pocket, Willow responding to their urgent messages. She texted back quickly, following Star into forest. "Something wrong with White Patch. Ranger Tom with us. We'll update when we can." They walked for nearly an hour, the storm gradually subsiding as they penetrated deeper into the trees. Star led them to a place Olivia recognized with a jolt, the clearing near the waterfall where they had confronted the poachers 6 years ago. There, in the shelter of a rocky overhang, lay the white-patched bear, her massive body unnaturally still. Beside her huddled her other two offspring, River and Sky, their postures speaking of fear and confusion. Tom approached cautiously, his experienced eyes assessing the situation. "She's alive," he reported after a moment. "But something's very wrong. Her breathing is labored." Star positioned himself between his siblings, watching as Tom set down his medical kit and began a careful examination of their mother. "There's no obvious injury," he said after several minutes. "No blood, no broken bones that I can see, but she's burning with fever." "Could it be an infection? A virus?" Marcus asked, keeping a respectful distance. Tom's face was grim. "Could be, but this isn't typical. I've never seen—" He trailed off, his fingers probing gently along the bear's side. "Wait, there's something here." He parted the thick fur carefully, revealing a small, puckered wound, almost healed on the surface but surrounded by angry, swollen flesh. "It's a bullet," he said quietly, "lodged deep. Must have been there for months, festering." He looked up at Marcus and Olivia. "Probably from those same poachers. They must have hit her before they were caught, but the wound wasn't immediately fatal." "Can you help her?" Olivia asked, her heart aching for the magnificent creature who had been part of their lives for so long. Tom ran a hand through his hair, his breath fogging in the cold air. "She needs surgery to remove the bullet and clear the infection. But I can't do that here, and we can't move her in this condition." He hesitated. "Even if we could get her to a wildlife facility, most wouldn't attempt to save her. They'd euthanize her as the most humane option." "No," Olivia said fiercely. "There has to be another way." The bears around them grew restless, sensing the gravity of the conversation. Star made a low, mournful sound that seemed to vibrate through the clearing. Tom's phone buzzed. He checked it, his eyebrows rising in surprise. "It's your daughter. She's asking if I've checked for a bullet wound near the right flank." He looked up, startled. How could she possibly know? "Willow always knows," Marcus said simply. A series of texts followed, Willow asking detailed questions about the bear's condition, Tom responding with increasing amazement at her accuracy. Finally, Tom looked up from his phone. "She's contacting her professor. Dr. Nakamura apparently has experience with wildlife veterinary surgery. Willow's also getting in touch with a pilot friend who owes her a favor." He shook his head in disbelief. "She's mobilizing resources faster than I could through official channels." "That's our daughter," Olivia said, a flicker of hope warming her despite the desperate situation. While they waited, Tom administered antibiotics and fluids to the suffering bear, his skilled hands working with gentle efficiency. The three offspring remained close, occasionally approaching to nuzzle their mother's fur before retreating to give Tom space. An hour passed, then 2. The white-patched bear's breathing grew more labored. Tom's face reflected his concern as he checked her vital signs again. "If help doesn't arrive soon," he began, then stopped as the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors echoed across the valley. Minutes later, the clearing was transformed into an impromptu field hospital. Dr. Nakamura, a small, intense woman with decades of experience in wildlife medicine, took charge immediately, directing her team of graduate students who had accompanied her on the emergency flight. "Extraordinary case," she commented as she examined the bear. "Extraordinary circumstances. When Willow called, I could hardly believe it, but—" She glanced at the three offspring, who watched the proceedings with remarkable calm. Some things must be seen to be believed. The surgery proceeded there in the clearing, a challenging, delicate operation to remove the bullet and clean the infected wound. Throughout the procedure, the offspring bears remained present but unobtrusive, as if understanding the humans were trying to help. "Never seen anything like it," one of the graduate students whispered to Olivia. "Bears tolerating human presence this close to an injured family member? It defies everything we know about ursine behavior." Olivia simply nodded. She had long ago stopped trying to explain the special relationship between her family and these bears. Some things were beyond scientific explanation. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the snow-covered clearing in shades of pink and gold, Dr. Nakamura finally straightened, stretching her back after hours bent over her patient. "The bullet is removed. The infection drained," she announced. "I've administered strong antibiotics and anti-inflammatory medication." She looked at the watching bears, then back to Marcus and Olivia. "Now we wait. The next 24 hours will be critical." They set up a temporary shelter near the bear, a canvas tent with portable heaters to protect them from the mountain cold. Dr. Nakamura and Tom would remain to monitor the bear's condition. Marcus volunteered to return to the cabin to gather more supplies. As Olivia helped secure the tent, her phone rang. Willow's face appeared on the screen. "Mom, how is she?" Her daughter's voice was tense with worry. "Doctor?" Nakamura removed the bullet. "She says there's hope, but the next day will tell." Olivia moved to a spot where the white-patched bear was visible in the camera frame. "She's still unconscious from the anesthesia." Willow's face crumpled. "I should be there. I'm trying to get a flight out, but everything's booked because of the holidays." "You've already done so much, honey. Without you, we wouldn't have known what was wrong or how to help." "It's not enough," Willow insisted. "She came to me in a dream last night, Mom. I saw her lying there in pain. I could feel it. Tears filled her eyes. She's been carrying that bullet for 6 months, ever since the poachers, fighting it all this time, trying to stay strong for her cubs." "Her children aren't cubs anymore," Olivia said gently. "They're almost grown. That's why she held on so long, to see them to maturity." "She needs to hold on longer," Willow said fiercely. "I'm coming home, somehow." After the call ended, Olivia sat beside the unconscious bear, studying the magnificent creature who had become so intertwined with their family's story. In repose, her face was peaceful, the lines of pain temporarily erased by the strong medications. "She's calling you Mother Bear, you know," came a quiet voice. Olivia looked up to see Tom sitting nearby, his weathered face thoughtful in the early morning light. "Who is?" "Willow." In Shoshone tradition, when a human and animal form a deep connection, they take on aspects of each other's spirit. He nodded toward the white-patched bear. "You've been called to this bear's side just as she once came to your family's aid. It's a sacred circle." The bear's offspring approached cautiously, Star leading the way. He sniffed at his mother, then at Olivia, before settling himself on the ground between them, a bridge connecting the two mothers. "I'm not special like Willow," Olivia said softly. "I can't communicate with them." Tom smiled. "Maybe not in the same way, but love speaks its own language." He rose and headed toward the tent. "I'll bring you some coffee. It's going to be a long day." As the hours passed, Olivia remained beside the bear, sometimes talking softly, sometimes sitting in companionable silence. The offspring bears came and went, bringing small offerings, branches of fragrant pine, a cluster of winter berries, which they placed near their mother as if in healing ritual. By evening, the white-patched bear had begun to stir, her massive body shifting, low groans signaling her return to consciousness. Dr. Nakamura checked her vital signs and nodded in satisfaction. "Her temperature is down. The antibiotics are working." She patted Olivia's shoulder. "Your bear is a fighter." "She's not my bear," Olivia corrected automatically. Dr. Nakamura regarded her thoughtfully. "Isn't she? From everything Willow has told me, this animal has been part of your family's journey for nearly 2 decades. She adjusted the bear's intravenous line. "In my culture, we believe that when an animal chooses to share its path with you, it becomes neither wild nor tame, but something else entirely, a companion on life's journey." As night fell, the bear opened her eyes fully for the first time. Her gaze, clouded with pain but alert, found Olivia immediately. There was recognition there, and something more, a wordless communication that Olivia felt rather than heard. "Your children are here," Olivia said softly, gesturing to where the 3 younger bears dozed nearby. "They brought us to you. They knew we could help." The white-patched bear made a rumbling sound deep in her chest. Her offspring stirred, approaching to nuzzle and investigate their awakening mother. Olivia's phone lit up with a text from Willow. "I found a flight. Landing in 3 hours. Dad's picking me up. How is she?" As Olivia typed a response, "Awake, fighting, waiting for you." She felt something brush against her arm. The white-patched bear had extended one massive paw, her claws retracted, the gesture unmistakably deliberate. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia gently placed her hand against the bear's paw. Connection, acknowledgement, gratitude. "Willow's coming," she whispered. "Hold on just a little longer." The reunion, when it came, left not a dry eye in the clearing. Willow arrived just before midnight, breathless from the hurried journey, her face pale with exhaustion and worry. At the sight of the white-patched bear lying conscious but weak on the forest floor, she dropped to her knees. "I'm here," she said, her voice breaking. "I came back, just like I promised." To the astonishment of Dr. Nakamura and her team, the bear responded with a series of gentle huffs and grunts, sounds that seemed to carry specific meaning. Willow nodded, as if understanding perfectly, occasionally replying with her own soft vocalizations. "What is she saying?" Dr. Nakamura whispered to Olivia, her scientific skepticism warring with the evidence before her eyes. "She's telling Willow about the pain, how long she's been carrying it," Olivia replied, surprising herself with the certainty of her interpretation. "And she's saying she held on because she knew Willow would come, that the circle needed to be completed." The bear's offspring approached Willow one by one, greeting her with familiar nudges and sniffs. Star, the one who had led them to his mother, pressed his forehead against Willow's shoulder in a gesture of profound trust. Throughout the night, Willow remained by the bear's side, sometimes speaking aloud, sometimes communicating in ways no one else could fully comprehend. By morning, the change in the white-patched bear was remarkable, her eyes brighter, her movement stronger, her will to live visibly renewed. "It's extraordinary, Doctor," Nakamura murmured, checking the bear's vitals again. "The infection is responding to treatment faster than I would have thought possible. And her will to recover." She shook her head in amazement. "I've never seen anything like it." Over the next 3 days, a remarkable healing process unfolded in the clearing. The white-patched bear grew stronger by the hour, the infection receding, her appetite returning. Dr. Nakamura and her team documented everything, their scientific training challenged by what they were witnessing. "We're observing interspecies communication that defies conventional understanding," Dr. Nakamura said to Willow on the 3rd evening, as they shared a meal by the campfire. "Your connection with these bears could revolutionize wildlife biology. Would you consider allowing me to include this case study in my research?" Willow considered the question carefully. watching the bear family resting comfortably nearby. "Only if it helps protect them," she finally answered, "and others like them. The world needs to understand that animals are not just creatures operating on instinct. They feel, they remember, they form bonds. They're people in their own way." Dr. Nakamura nodded thoughtfully. "People, yes, that's precisely the paradigm shift we need." She glanced at her notebooks filled with observations. "With your permission, I'd like to establish a long-term research project here. Minimally invasive, of course. Just observation and documentation." "A sanctuary," Willow suggested, her eyes lighting up. "This whole valley could be designated as protected land, not just for bears, but for the relationship between humans and wildlife." The idea took root and blossomed over the following days. Ranger Tom, with his connections to both the Forest Service and the indigenous communities with ancestral claims to the land, began making calls. Dr. Nakamura leveraged her academic influence to secure preliminary funding commitments. On the 5th day, the white-patched bear stood up for the first time since the surgery. Her offspring gathered around her, vocalizing excitedly as she took tentative steps. Willow watched with tears in her eyes, her hand clasped in Olivia's. "She's going to be okay," Willow whispered. Olivia squeezed her daughter's hand. "Because of you. Because you heard her call for help across hundreds of miles." "Not just me," Willow corrected. "Because of all of us, the circle, like Ranger Tom says." She looked at her mother with sudden intensity. "This is what I meant to do with my life, Mom. Not just study animals from a distance, but build bridges between their world and ours." The white-patched bear approached them slowly, her movements still careful, but her eyes bright with renewed strength. She stopped before Willow and Olivia, her massive head level with theirs, and made a soft chuffing sound. "She's thanking us," Willow translated unnecessarily. The gratitude was palpable even to those without her special connection. The bear then did something unprecedented. She gently butted her head against Willow's chest, then repeated the gesture with Olivia. A blessing, an acknowledgement, a formal connection. "She's making us part of her clan," Willow said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's a sacred honor among bears. Very rare." The bear's offspring joined the circle, each touching their heads to the humans in turn. Even Dr. Nakamura and her team were included, though they stood trembling with a mixture of fear and awe at this intimate contact with wild predators. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. The question hung in the air, encompassing far more than just the immediate future of the bear family. It was Ranger Tom who answered, his weathered face solemn. "Now we honor the gift we've been given. We protect this place, these bears, this connection." He looked around the circle of humans and bears with quiet certainty. Something ancient is being remembered here, something most of humanity has forgotten. Spring returned to the mountains, bringing renewal to the valley. The proposal for what was now being called the Harmony Wildlife Sanctuary had moved with unprecedented speed through bureaucratic channels, fueled by Dr. Nakamura's compelling research, Ranger Tom's diplomatic efforts, and the passionate advocacy of the Reed family. On a perfect May morning, under a cloudless sky, a small ceremony took place at the edge of the creek where everything had begun almost 19 years before. Officials from wildlife agencies, representatives from indigenous nations, conservationists, and academics gathered to formalize the sanctuary's creation. At the heart of it all stood Willow, now taking a semester's leave from university to help establish the sanctuary's foundation. Beside her were Marcus and Olivia, pride evident in their faces, as they watched their daughter address the assembled group. "This sanctuary represents more than just protected land," Willow said, her clear voice carrying across the clearing. "It's a commitment to a new way of relating to the natural world, not as something separate from us, but as community, as family." She gestured toward the tree line, where the white-patched bear and her fully grown offspring stood watching the proceedings with evident interest. The bear had recovered completely, the only sign of her near-fatal injury, a slight stiffness in her movements on cold mornings. These bears could have chosen to avoid humans completely after their encounters with poachers, Willow continued. Instead, they reached across the species divide to ask for help, to offer connection. Their courage and trust challenge us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about wildlife. Dr. Nakamura stepped forward, adding her scientific perspective to Willow's heartfelt words. "The behavioral patterns we've documented here defy conventional understanding. These bears demonstrate complex social reasoning, intergenerational memory, and interspecies communication that revolutionizes our conception of ursine intelligence." The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of a simple wooden sign at the sanctuary's entrance, "Harmony Wildlife Sanctuary, where understanding begins." Carved into the sign was the image of a human hand and a bear paw, nearly touching. As the official party moved toward the tables set up for the reception, Willow slipped away, making her way to the creek's edge. The white-patched bear joined her there, sitting beside her with comfortable familiarity. "We did it," Willow said softly, watching the sunlight dance on the water. The bear made a gentle huffing sound that Willow had come to recognize as agreement. "I've been thinking about what to call you," Willow continued, addressing a question that had lingered for years. "I know you have your own name in bear language, but I need something to call you when I talk about you to others." The bear turned her intelligent eyes to Willow, waiting. "How about Echo?" Willow suggested. "Because you're an echo of that first connection by the waterfall, a reminder that even the smallest voice, a baby's cry, can start something that changes the world." The newly named Echo seemed to consider this, then dipped her massive head in what could only be interpreted as approval. Olivia approached, moving quietly so as not to disturb the moment. "The Secretary of the Interior wants to speak with you," she told Willow. "I think she's going to offer funding for your research program." Willow nodded, rising to her feet. "I'll be right there." As her mother turned to go, she added, "Mom? Do you ever think about how different our lives would have been if I hadn't screamed that day? If I hadn't somehow known that cub needed help?" Olivia paused, looking back at her extraordinary daughter standing beside the massive bear, an image that would have terrified her once but now seemed as natural as breathing. "I believe some souls are born with ancient knowledge," she said softly. "You came into this world already remembering what most of us spend our lives trying to relearn, that all living things are connected, that compassion doesn't stop at the boundaries of species." Echo rose and moved toward Olivia, stopping just before her. Slowly, deliberately, the bear extended her paw, placing it gently on the ground between them. An invitation, a gesture of trust. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia mirrored the action, placing her hand on the earth beside the massive paw. Not touching, but connected by the soil they shared. "Echo," Olivia said, trying the name for the first time. "Thank you for being patient while we learned to listen." The bear's eyes held hers, deep pools of understanding that transcended language. In that gaze, Olivia saw recognition of their shared journey, two mothers who had witnessed the extraordinary unfolding of a connection that began with a baby's desperate cry and a cub's fateful tumble into rushing water. Behind them, the newly established sanctuary stretched into the distance, a testament to the power of that connection. Before them lay a future where the ancient divide between human and wild might begin to heal, guided by a young woman who had always known how to listen to voices others couldn't hear. Echo made a soft sound, somewhere between a huff and a purr, then turned and moved with unhurried dignity back toward the forest. At the tree line, she paused, looking back at mother and daughter standing together by the water's edge. "She's saying this isn't an ending," Willow translated, her voice catching. "It's just the beginning of a new chapter." As Echo disappeared among the trees, a chorus of other wildlife voices rose from the forest, birds calling, squirrels chattering, the distant howl of a wolf. The mountain itself seemed to be speaking, acknowledging the promise of this new beginning. Olivia put her arm around her daughter's shoulders, marveling at the journey that had brought them here, from a frightened mother watching her baby scream at a drowning bear cub, to standing at the threshold of a new relationship between humans and the natural world. "A new chapter," she agreed, her heart full of gratitude for the courageous baby who had grown into this remarkable young woman. "And it all began with your shout." Together, they walked back toward the gathering, where humans were coming together to celebrate and protect the connections Willow had shown them were possible, connections that had always existed, waiting only for those with the courage and wisdom to recognize them. In the forest, Echo and her family moved through the sanctuary that would now protect them for generations to come, their paw prints overlapping occasionally with human footprints, separate paths that sometimes converged, two species finding harmony in a shared world, and somewhere, in the rushing water of the creek, echoed the memory of a moment that had changed everything. A baby's determined cry that had bridged worlds, started a rescue, and awakened understanding that rippled outward like water disturbed by a fallen cub, touching life after life with its transformative power.